Okay, so we have breaking news. Gavin Newsom late last night suffered another major legal setback as the appeals court has ruled in favor of President Trump. Also, Democrats are continuing to demand that ICE officials remove their mask and make their identities publicly known. Well, we're going to get into this, show you what both sides are saying, and then give you the bottom line.
Well, we got major breaking news overnight out of California. Well, at least I was sleeping. A federal appeals court ruled that President Trump can keep control of California's National Guard in Los Angeles for now. The three-judge panel rejected a lower court's order for the president to return control of the Guardsmen to California Governor Gavin Newsom. With us now, CNN senior legal analyst, former federal and state prosecutor Ellie Homan. Counselor, thanks so much for being with us. So what did this three-judge panel say the president can do?
John, so this is a win for the Trump administration, a setback for Gavin Newsom in the state of California. The core holding here is that the courts do have a role, but a very limited one, in reviewing the president's decision to deploy the National Guard. The courts basically said, we, the courts, cannot reverse the president simply because we might disagree. We have to give the president, quote, broad deference, meaning we have to let the president do what he wants unless he has done something that is patently absurd or taken in bad faith. And then the court applied that very broad deference to this case, and they found that, well, one of the reasons Donald Trump gave for deploying the National Guard is it's necessary to enforce federal laws, and the Court of Appeals said that's reasonable. That's within his power. Therefore, the power remains with the president to deploy the National Guard, as he has done here.
All right, so no question, this is a major legal setback for Gavin Newsom. Listen, this guy's been making a fool of himself. If you've been following him on social media, he's ramping up his attacks against the president. I don't think it's going to yield him the results he's looking for because it's a strategy that we've seen from Democrats over the past decade. And where has it gotten them? And the other troubling thing here, just for the record, is how the left is already spinning this ruling. Number one, they say this isn't a major win for President Trump. And number two, they continue to fear monger their audience and claim that President Trump's going to deploy the military in every single city across the country. Take a listen.
What is to stop the federal government from doing this in more cities?
Yeah, well, I mean, as Lisa said, look, this wasn't a complete win for the Trump administration because there is still judicial review. That's an important point. Trump doesn't have unlimited power here, but what you saw there in that exchange, Anna, is really what he does have is a very compliant cabinet, including a Secretary of Defense. And so if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. I think that's what's at stake here. Trump is going to keep pushing and pushing toward the limits of the law and beyond it if he can get away with it. And so unfortunately, I think that we're going to find these issues in court, including at the Supreme Court, many more times during this second Trump term. In the meantime, my fear, and I think the fear of a lot of other people, and I think we've seen some of this in Los Angeles and other places, is that this kind of deployment, unnecessary deployment of the National Guard is really meant to provoke demonstrators into engaging in violence, and therefore, I think is going to provoke more conflict than it's going to prevent, actually.
Prime example of how Democrats live on an entirely different planet in a different universe. I mean, you tell this guy that deploying National Guard troops to protect federal property, particularly federal buildings and personnel, is provoking rioters to loot and burn down buildings and set electric vehicles on fire and wave Mexican flags. Give me a break, okay? That's number one. Number two, this is a major win for President Trump, okay? There's no question about it. The fact that he says, oh, it's a loss because it requires judicial review. The president's not afraid of judicial review, ladies and gentlemen. That's why he has a Department of Justice. I mean, he's not in the courtroom like that. It's so interesting how they twist it. And then they use this language to continue to make their base scared and buy into this idea that he's going to deploy the military into every city. Prime example of that is what just happened on Capitol Hill between Elizabeth Warren and Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. Take a look.
If the president says he wants to send troops to 15 cities, would you be willing to do that?
Senator, I don't accept your hypothetical because
that's a hypothetical.
Not a real
That's
one.
the question. You're the Secretary of Defense. Would you send troops to 15 cities? If the president said, do it, would you do it? 15 cities.
Again, Senator, it's a complete hypothetical lacking any context
Look,
at all.
You're the Secretary
and I refuse
of
to box
Defense.
myself in.
All right. Well, while Elizabeth Warren was playing hypotheticals with Pete Hegseth, you know what Gavin Newsom was doing during these riots? Well, according to Christopher Rufo, California Governor Gavin Newsom attended a luxury wine tasting in Napa while rioters had already begun barricading streets, lighting cars on fire, and attacking law enforcement in Los Angeles. Newsom was sipping Cabernet while California burned. And there's the official photo and the comparison. Now, to be fair, let's read the response from the governor's office, which they did not like. Okay, they said, "You are a dishonest hack. You deliberately omitted key context we gave you, including that the event was an annual fundraiser for cancer research hosted in honor of the governor's dead mother who died of breast cancer. That's not sloppy journalism. It's deliberately dishonest." Now, if you actually read the article, they did include that information in there. And I'm just being fair here. And the most important thing is President Trump has the authority, and the way Gavin Newsom is responding is despicable. And I'm going to show you that here shortly. But let's first hear from Fox News and what they had to say.
The reaction from Governor Newsom is quite remarkable. I mean, sort of this no kings nonsense, which is just the standard Democratic talking point. But what's also important substantively, the chief of police in Los Angeles said before the National Guard was brought in that they were overwhelmed with the situation. So this wasn't just President Trump acting on his own. This was seen on the ground by local law enforcement. Ultimately, though, this is a huge win for President Trump, a huge win for the citizens of Los Angeles and America, and also a huge win for law enforcement that they're able to carry out their duties and they get the support of the federal government when local agitators, rioters, even politicians are standing in their way.
Okay, so here is the reaction from Gavin Newsom. He writes this fight doesn't end here. The court rightly rejected Trump's claim that he can do whatever he wants with the National Guard and not have to explain himself to a court. The president is not a king and is not above the law. We will press forward with our challenge to President Trump's authoritarian use of U.S. military soldiers against citizens. And so what does that indicate? It indicates that Gavin Newsom is talking about appealing this to the Supreme Court. Now, wait till you see what CNN had to say about this, but first, here's what President Trump had to say. Big win in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on the president's core power to call in National Guard. The judges obviously realize that Gavin Newsom is incompetent and ill-prepared, but this is much bigger than Gavin because all over the United States, if our cities and our people need protection, we are the ones to give it to them should state and local police be unable, for whatever reason, to get the job done. This is a great decision for our country, and we will continue to protect and defend law-abiding Americans. Congratulations to the Ninth Circuit. America is proud of you tonight. Now, here's what CNN had to say about Gavin Newsom's next step.
If I was in California's legal position here, I would tell the governor, you don't want to appeal this. You don't want to bring this up to the Supreme Court. Yes, you have the option to ask them to take it. That's your sort of last best chance here. But I think you're going to lose, California. I think if you look at this opinion, it was a 3-0 unanimous opinion from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. You had 2 Trump appointees and a Biden appointee on that court. I don't see any way any of the 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court say, sure, a trial-level district judge can overrule the president on this issue just because he disagrees. I even think some of the liberals might join with the conservatives on this, as we saw with the Biden appointee. So it's an interesting strategic decision. If they do bring it up to the Supreme Court, California, and if the Supreme Court rules again in favor of the Trump administration, then that's going to be nationwide binding, an even bigger loss for California.
Okay, so essentially, if Gavin Newsom decides to appeal this to the Supreme Court, that's playing into the hands of President Trump. This once again proves that they continue to choose issues that they're weak in. And this is an example that Gavin Newsom does not have the right foundation to fight with the Trump administration on this issue. Now, let's hear from the Los Angeles mayor, because once again, she proves that not only is she incompetent, but she's ignorant as it pertains to the plight of military soldiers. Take a listen.
Can I tell you something, though, that we need to think about? We need to think about the National Guard that is federalized. We need to think about the Marines. You know, those are young women and men who are on this deployment, brought away from their homes, their families, their education. And to me, it's like using them as props take them away from their school, take them away from their employment to do this deployment that is not needed is not only cruel, but it's impacting their families too. I think on Father's Day, the children that were waiting for their fathers to come home, that they have missing fathers because they were detained, the people who were here legally that showed up for their immigration appointment that's required every year and they get detained, this chaos needs to stop, and it can only stop out of the White House.
Okay, so let's just address a couple of things that she had to say. Number one, majority of these people who have been doing these appointments every year, they were allowed to do them under the Biden administration because the Biden administration did not want to enforce the law. That's number one. Number two, now that President Trump is in office, it's within his authority to decide on what his policies are going to be. And currently the policies are, if you do not have a legal right to be here, meaning you don't have an active visa or your papers have expired and you're undocumented, and if you are an illegal alien or a criminal illegal alien, you're going to be deported. And that's something that Democrats just cannot wrap their head around because they don't believe in that stuff. They believe if you cross the border illegally, you can become an American citizen. Who cares if the other people had to sit in line for a while? You could skip the line. And the other thing about military soldiers, it's you sign up knowing you're going to deploy at the most inconvenient times as it pertains to your family. Every military soldier knows that. So we don't need the mayor going on there and telling a sob story. Military soldiers don't want people feeling sorry for them. They take pride in their service. They relish the opportunity to deploy. That's the whole purpose of being in the military. So again, I mean, these people, they speak like they know, but they don't. And it gets more divisive and dangerous when you continue to have congressional leaders calling for ICE to remove their masks and make their identities known to the public. Take a look.
But these people are wearing masks and are totally unidentified. And the question is why? The question is why? It's completely improper. And again, one has to assume they're hiding something or they're hiding misbehavior, because otherwise, why would they be wearing masks and denying their identities?
Yeah, so this is just politics 101, people. It never makes logical sense. Clearly, they're wearing masks and concealing their identity because some of the people that they have to detain and ultimately deport are members of the cartel who are extremely violent and will move to murder these individuals' families. Okay, that's just the reality, all right? And this isn't the only time where law enforcement would wear masks. We already know that. But again, Democrats have to come up with something in order to disagree and become the resistance instead of finding ways to collaborate. And I've said it and I'll say it again. The fact that they're refusing to collaborate with federal authorities, but at the same time demand federal authorities to give them information about who they're seeking to deport, I don't think it works that way, okay? You just can't have it both ways. Now, ICE is getting smart because they just released a new policy that prevents people in Congress from causing chaos at these ICE detention centers. Take a listen.
ICE is now imposing new rules on congressional visits, noting under federal law, members of Congress can make an unannounced oversight visits to immigration facilities that, quote, detain or otherwise house aliens. Lawmakers are not required to provide prior notice of the intent to enter a facility to conduct oversight, though members of their staff must request a visit at least 24 hours in advance. But in guidance released this month, Immigration and ICE and Customs Enforcement asked members of Congress to give at least 72 hours notice for a visit to its facilities.
Now, ICE is making a smart move here because it gives them time to prepare for the chaos that will come when these congressional leaders show up with all these protesters. Let's just be honest about it. And at the same time, they're playing the same game that Democrats are. If it was Democrats, they'd be moving to make this policy announcement as well. So there's nothing nefarious going on here. In fact, it's just to make sure that people are safe. And that's just something that Democrats cannot relate to. Now, what's interesting is an individual who's running to be the next New York City mayor, he's also hopping on the bandwagon. And he's questioning, why do ICE officials have to wear masks? And who is that? That's none other than Andrew Cuomo. Take a listen.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. President. Why do the federal ICE agents wear masks covering their face? If they're not ashamed of what they're doing and they're not doing anything illegal, why are they wearing masks covering their identity? Don't the American people have a right to see who they are? Are they a new form of secret police? Tell the ICE agents take off their masks, Mr. President. the American people have a right to know who they are.
And clearly the pushback would be, well, why don't we tell the rioters to take off their masks as well? Right? I mean, we can go all day long back and forth about this. And that's why I say this is more political theater than it is substance. Okay. This is a moot point. ICE officials by law are allowed to wear masks. And if Congress wants to change the law, then that's maybe what you should be dedicating your time to, Andrew Cuomo, is going down to Capitol Hill and getting the lawmakers to change it. And that's my overall message to a lot of people who disagree with President Trump. If you feel you're so convicted in your beliefs that he is wrong here and he's violating the law, or you don't like the law, why are you not protesting on Capitol Hill? And now in this next clip, here we are once again where we have these elected leaders obstructing ICE from doing their job. They are currently at a courthouse in New York, and they're trying to detain a migrant who has a deportation order. But of course, the elected official is trying to get in the way. So why don't we take a look at that now?
Stop. You guys will go to jail if you impede.
I got that one. Not proud though. I thought they were going to arrest.
So I feel like we've gone over the law so many times, and I don't believe these protesters have. I don't think they even read it. And it clearly states that ICE officials can detain a migrant in the courthouse. There's no question about that. And matter of fact, if there is a deportation order issued by an immigration judge, they can detain them anywhere at any time. And that's just the fact of the matter. And again, Democrats are so caught up in their compassion, it blinds them from understanding what the law actually says. Now, in case you need a reminder about how important the work that ICE is doing really is, look no further to this news story that just came out today from Fox News. Take a listen.
I went out with ICE here in Los Angeles the other day, and they arrested this convicted murderer from El Salvador who also happens to be a gang member. Usually these ICE arrestees don't talk to us, but this guy was talking to our camera saying, ICE can't deport me because I have a special form of protection called CAT. Take a listen to this.
ICE says you have a deportation order since February 2024, sir.
No, I just got CAT on December the 18th. Of last year by the BIA. You can call my lawyer.
Yeah, so it turns out he's right, Jonathan. He does have something called DCAT, deferred removal under the Convention Against Torture. Basically means he can't be deported back to El Salvador because he's afraid someone there is going to kill or torture him. That ruling was made in December 2024 in the final days of the Biden administration. But just take a look at this guy's rap sheet, essentially. He's allegedly a Sureños gang member. He's had an active deportation order since last year. He's a convicted murderer. He also has 2 prior convictions for attempted murder. Jonathan, this guy seems to check every single box for deportation, and we can't send him back to El Salvador.
This says all you need to know about the Biden-Mayorkas immigration policy. It was about not deporting anyone. They never even cared about even keeping the most serious criminals in the country because they wanted to encourage more illegal immigration by saying if you get here, you'll never get thrown out.
Yeah, see, this shows you just how bad it is when Democrats are in control in regards to immigration. And this is why conservatives are so hell-bent, including President Trump, on cleaning this mess up. Just think about the amount of people just like that individual who's still in our country today. And the reason why they're still in our country is because a lot of them hide out where? In blue inner cities, these sanctuary cities, where the policies do not allow local law enforcement to collaborate with federal authorities. Can you believe that? Why do you not allow a sheriff or local police deputy who, arrested one of these individuals? They did commit a crime. Ultimately, they were let out, but you don't tell ICE officials? Make that make sense, please.
But what's important here is kind of interesting because they're saying it's too dangerous to go back to El Salvador, but in fact, LA in and of itself has a murder rate 7 times higher than El Salvador. The gang problem is largely gone in El Salvador thanks to their new president. But what ICE can do here, or what DHS can do, is they can reopen this case and say, hey, the situation is not dangerous for him in El Salvador. He can be deported there. Alternatively, they can keep him in custody and wait for a third party to deport him to. But the last thing he should be is out on the streets of the United States.
Yeah, no question. And that's exactly what we voted for. We want people like that individual out of this country immediately. And but again, people argue that this person deserves due process. I disagree. I believe the due process is that if we find you, you're deported. That is the process. We know you crossed the border illegally. We also know you committed crimes. We don't need to hear your story of why you did all that. You just need to go. Now, this actually brings me to your opinion. What are your thoughts about what we discussed in this video? Gavin Newsom suffered a major legal setback once again. We know he's attacking the president every single day. He's basically living on social media at this point. But like I stated, I don't think it's going to yield him the results that he truly wants. You let me know if we're spot on about that. And finally, this nonsense from Democrats who are continuing to demand that ICE officials remove masks and publicly tell people what their identity is. I mean, who does that, right? Let me know if you see things the same way or what your thoughts might be about all this in the comment section below. Okay, so in our next video, President Trump offered a stunning proposal to Iran. He wants to take the next 2 weeks to exercise diplomacy. Some people are not buying it. Who knows? But I'd like to give you guys the facts, including what happened yesterday at Dodger Stadium that left people confused. If you missed out on those stories and more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.